Are you or anyone else you know interested in buying or selling a home? How about saving the planet? Climate Change Realty is the only company operating in all 50 states that allows you to create thousands of dollars in donations absolutely for free. Yes, that's right. Our service and your donations are free. Climate Change Realty can connect you with one of the best real estate agents in your city. And because of that connection, a full 25% of your real estate agent's commissions will be donated to a 501c3 nonprofit organization of your choice. Real estate agents earn between 2 to 3% of the final sales price when they help you buy or sell a home. That's at least $500 donated for every $100,000 worth of real estate sold when you find your real estate agent with Climate Change Realty. Visit www.ccrboulder.com today and click Find an Agent to help us transform the real estate market into a battery for the regenerative economy. Welcome to the podcast. Chris, really great to meet you, man. Thanks for taking some time to come on the podcast.
Thanks, Ethan. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you, man. And we always like to get this show started with a little bit of background on who you are and how you got to be doing what you're doing at the current moment.
Okay, well, my name is Chris Stern. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of Carbocrete. But prior to that, I mean, way back when, I did a degree in mechanical engineering at McGill University in Montreal, had a career, and then in 2005 had an epiphany that perhaps working in the automotive industry wasn't the best thing for me. So I got involved in a solar power company, or a company that wanted to get in the solar power industry, and developed that. And then finally, after a couple iterations, started my own company called Pure Energies, which is a residential solar supplier, that was founded in Ontario, Canada. And then we quickly expanded to the United States. So we were originally a residential install, own, and operate model, and then we converted ourselves into basically Priceline.com for solar, and effectively, finding the best deal for the customer based on where they live and their roof and their utility, and so we did that and grew it to 200 people, and sold the company to NRG Energy in 2014. That's a bit about what I did, and then I was sitting around wondering what to do and what not to do for about a year, until my dad told me to go back to work, and then because twiddling your thumbs is not the best thing for you. So I was introduced to the folks at McGill that were doing research on a whole bunch of things, and this thing popped out at me like it had to be turned into a business rather than end up like on someone's shelf, some academic shelf somewhere. And so that's sort of the genesis of how we got here.
Cool. What do you suppose initiated kind of that shift when you were working in like automotive that made you want to switch to like clean tech? Like what was going on in your mind at that time that made you decide to make that shift?
Mostly because I don't know, people in automotive are, at least back then. I'm not sure what it was like now. What it's like now. We're not the most friendly bunch. So it's like if you're going to spend your time doing something, you might as well enjoy, the people that you go talk to, sell things to, right? So, it was a difficult business. It might still be or it may not be. I'm not sure, but I had to change.
And where did your background in like investing or like capital markets come from? When did you start getting interested in that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, during the Pure Energy's time, we had to raise cash, and so you basically, you have to learn on the fly and learn by doing and learn by experience. And so it's exciting to craft a story, and then tell people, uh, you know, what requires to be done to get investable. I did that when I'm investing in some companies, but also to present it to investors when they want to invest in a company that I'm involved with.
Great. So before we kind of dive into talking about what you're doing with your big like baby project right now, can you tell me a bit about some of the companies that you're interested in investing in with your investment firm? Is it InnovoBot? Is that right?
Yes, InnovaBot. Yes, yeah. So it's basically it's seed stage to Series A, but it's effectively companies that are trying to do something tech for good, and that's what we're looking for at InnovaBot.
Cool. All right. It's all coming together. I could see it. So what is carbicrete? Is that correct? Pronounced
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
basically it's basically two words. It's carbon and concrete, right? So we're effectively doing two things. On one side of the equation, we're providing a way to make concrete in a different way, and in the second side of the equation, we're basically getting rid of carbon dioxide forever. It's part of the concrete, and it will never come out. So that's the genesis of the name.
And where did this idea come from?
Well, the idea came from when I met Mirdad Mehuchin, the inventor. First of all, I had no idea that concrete was so cement was so um, polluting. I thought it was just this innocuous white substance that glues rocks and sand together in the presence of water. But little did I know. So he explained to me that cement, when you make it, produces a lot of CO2. In fact, 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions today are coming from the manufacturing of cement. And that's incredible. That's like if it were a country, it'd be third after United States and China.
Hmm.
Coming from a like clean tech background, I'm like, wow, okay, so you cement's bad, so you found a way to replace cement by using an industrial waste, which is steel slag, and furthermore, you actually cure it with CO2, so you put CO2 into the concrete forever. That's amazing. And so that's where the idea, you know, not for the business itself, but like I have to work on this basically. And then the business, is effectively being rolled out as a licensing model, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to teach people how to do this process. And so that's basically where the idea came about.
And you met him when you returned to McGill and you were going there to kind of just get inspiration on what to do next in your career. And you met this inventor guy and you're like, oh, he's doing something cool.
Exactly. I was introduced. And I'm like, wow, this is the coolest thing. Like, I didn't know what I could do with it, but it just sounded cool because it does
Right.
three things, right? It gets rid of a polluting product. It incorporates an industrial waste byproduct, and it gets rid of CO2 forever. So, and it makes a product you can explain to your grandmother.
Uh-huh.
Like, which is like they're like, who would have thunk, right? Like, all the other solutions out there are like, well, we're going to take CO2, we're going to put it into the ground. And people are like, they go, what? You want to put CO2 into the ground? How's that? How does that make sense? Like, I mean, all these solutions are required, but like,
Sure.
at least we're making a product that you can sell, and people can feel good about using it, because for every block we make, every paving stone, every piece of concrete, we're taking CO2 off the table.
I think that's essential, and that's something I spend a lot of my time thinking about is how to monetize carbon drawdown. And I'm not satisfied with the credit model. I don't think that really gets to the root of the problem. I think that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because I think something like what you're doing actually does get to the root of the problem. You need to create either a product or a service, a way to monetize carbon drawdown in a real um, I don't want to say measurable, but a real like direct way, rather than just creating some sort of financial product and doing some wizardry on an accounting balance sheet. Like you're actually putting carbon into the ground as something that people can use. But I guess my question is, this might sound kind of silly, but why? So concrete is the most widely used substance on Earth after water. Um, why is that the case, and is it really necessary that we need to keep creating all of this concrete? What can you tell me about like why and how we use concrete?
It's an awesome product, right? You can put it into almost any shape you want, and it lasts a long time, and it's strong, right? It can hold up buildings, so it's a product that's not going away anytime soon. We use about 30 gigatons of it every year. In China alone, they make enough concrete to make 2,000 pentagons, which at one time was the largest building in the world.
Hmm.
And they make enough concrete for 2,000 of them every single year. So but it's an awesome product. It's just that unfortunately, the way it's made now, it creates a lot of CO2.
You said we use 30 gigatons of concrete. I've only ever heard the phrase gigatons used for CO2. So that's an insane amount of weight. We're
Yeah.
producing that each year. That's new concrete being
Yep.
created.
Every single year.
Yeah. So this is an immense opportunity to get some carbon out of the atmosphere and stick it in the ground for good. Can I ask you what the difference between cement and concrete is?
Yeah, yeah. So just to be clear, we don't stick the CO2 into the ground. We stick it into the concrete.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's part of the product. The cement is the glue that binds all the particles together, and the end product, like a concrete block or like a foundation, that's concrete. So like all separated, they're nothing. But cement is the glue that holds all this together. So when you see a truck rolling down the highway or the street, it's not a cement truck; it's a concrete truck.
Is that the truck with the cylinder that's like spinning behind it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man. It doesn't seem like those things could be transporting 30 gigatons of weight.
It's there's lots of them,
Yeah.
and it's all over the world. It's fantastic. It's hard to fathom how much is being used.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is crazy. What are the key environmental issues that are involved in cement production and usage?
Well, effectively, what happens is you take limestone and you've got to bring it up to more than 1,000 degrees to burn it. You have to go through the calcination process, and that basically limestone is CaCO3, so calcium carbonate, and you got to tear off the CO2 to get to the calcium oxide, which is effectively cement, together with some other byproducts, and so that process. So you're burning normally fossil fuels to do that. So you can, you've got CO2 from the fossil fuels, but the calcination process is you're taking off CO2 from the calcium carbonate. So you can fix the situation of fossil fuels by using electricity somehow with renewable energy, but you cannot change the fact that CO2 is going to come off uh, during the chemical process. So that's how it pollutes.
So, how does like the cement industry work right now? If it's the most used substance, I imagine there's private builders, people who are building houses are using it, cities are using it to pave streets. Do you know how the sector is kind of like cut up and who's producing primarily the most cement?
Well, the most cement's being produced in China right now,
As a
and
country, yeah.
yeah, as a country. But I mean, the big companies are Lafarge Holcim, CRH, these Heidelberg Cement. These are some of the bigger players that are operating. They're huge, huge companies, multi-billion-dollar, Fortune 50 companies that are making this unique building product, and it's basically an oligarchy. There's not like 50 cement companies. There's four or five really big ones, and then like really small ones after that. But generally, it's an oligarchy.
And they're all private companies and they have contracts with, if the government wants to build a building, they're getting cement from these people. If someone is building a apartment complex, they're getting cement from these people depending on the circumstance, I suppose.
Yeah, they're generally not private companies. They're public,
Oh, okay.
but yes, they that's exactly what would happen. Generally, people don't buy cement; they buy concrete. So the concrete maker would buy the cement. So if the government, let's say the GSA, wanted to build a new Air Force base,
Yeah.
they would put it out for tender for a general contractor. Then the general contractor would put out a tender for himself or themselves to get all the concrete, and they would get a local concrete maker to bid on it. And then once they win the bid, then they would buy cement from one of these guys and make the concrete. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So why don't you tell me what steel slag is?
Steel slag is an industrial waste byproduct that's required um, in order to make good steel. So it's a very hard mineral made of calcium oxide and silicates, and so usually between 12 and 15% by weight of steel is steel slag after the process is completed. And generally, they pour it out the back door, and let it cool off. Once it hardens, it gets demetallized because there's entrapped steel in it. That gets sent back into the melt shop, and then the rest of the steel slag is doesn't have a huge value to it. I mean, the bigger chunks get sold off as aggregate for $5 a ton. The little fines and bits get thrown into a landfill, effectively.
When you say sold off as aggregate, what does that mean?
So aggregate is like sand or gravel. So steel slag could be seen as gravel, and aggregate means could be sand or gravel. Effectively, it's like filler.
Okay. So how large a percent of it is ending up in the landfills right now?
It's hard to say, but it's a big portion, basically more than 30%
Okay.
of the is ending up in landfills. But more importantly, we're taking something that has no value or
Uh-huh.
very little low value and creating something a valuable building product.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's exactly what we need to make like a circular economy. There's every single thing that we use, every single item, every atom should be used for something productive. That's what nature does, and that's what we should model our systems after. So, in comparison to cement, or even not in comparison to cement, how much steel is being manufactured each year?
Um, Hang on a second. How much steel? Give me like.
Yeah, Google that. Google that. Go for it. Oh, you got something else?
No, no. I'm gonna try and do this by calculator. I would say it's about 1,500. Um, I would say 1.5 gigatons of steel made every year.
Okay. So it's about a 20th of the cement production. And of that steel, how much slag is coming out? Did we cover that already?
Yes, about 12 to 15% of that. So about
Oh
250 million.
wow.
Yeah, so 250 million tons um, of is basically is being created.
Okay. So can you kind of explain how your product works, like from beginning to end to like delivery? And are you getting CO2 only from slag, or are there other places where you're inserting CO2 into your product?
So basically we select good steel slag. So more than 70% of it's suitable for our process. We grind it down to the size of basically cement. Then it gets mixed with aggregates like rock and sand and water. And then we put it into a formation machine, like a block making machine or a paving stone making machine, make a product like that, and then put it inside of a curing chamber where we shut the doors, and it goes into the curing process where we inject CO2 into the product, and then the CO2 is consumed by the steel slag, and it creates calcium carbonate, which is effectively the binder.
Okay, wait. So where's the CO2 coming from?
The CO2, well, it gets delivered to the plant by a truck, or it could be delivered by a pipe, and it's coming from generally methanol plants have CO2 off
Okay.
gassing.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that are where CO2 is being captured.
Hold on. So you're not just drawing down carbon, you're also reducing the waste stream at the same
Yeah,
time with your
yeah,
product.
we're doing three things. We get rid of cement, which means we get rid of that. The
Oh yeah,
polluting
yeah.
aspect. Get rid of cement. We get rid of steel slag, which is an industrial waste byproduct, and we get rid of CO2. So we do three things, and we make a product that you can explain to your grandmother. So like that's you know the beauty of this. It's simple.
Yeah. Well, awesome. How long ago did you start, and how's it going?
Yeah, so we started in 2016. My business partner started his PhD in 2012, but I only met him in 2015. Then we incorporated in 2016, and then we basically have been growing the company. We've just we've got 30 employees now. We just closed our the first part of our Series A last week for 12 million dollars,
Oh,
and
congrats. Awesome.
and next week we'll have the second closing. So there's there's a bit more to come in, and that's it. We're off to the races. We're at phase two of our pilot, which is being being done at about an hour away from Montreal in Quebec, and after that, we've got MOUs signed up with many different licensees, as well as we're in discussions with a couple of the majors to do some pilots and get going with them.
So could you explain a bit in more detail, like how your model works? Did you say that you're licensing to local manufacturers, or how exactly does it work?
Yeah, so we determine like a steel plant. We find how much slag they're producing. We determine how much is usable, and then we from that we can basically know what we can supply to the market. We go find concrete makers. We sign them up to a deal where we license the technology on a per piece basis, and also we keep the carbon credits. That are associated with the actual concrete, and then we can monetize that however we see fit. Either on the compliance market or on the voluntary market.
So if I'm a cement producer, I think is the right. Is that your potential target customer is someone who's making cement, or someone? I'm a little bit confused between the cement and the concrete. The concrete is the final product. The cement is the method for creating it. So a concrete producer. If I make concrete for the city of Denver, Colorado, why would I want to work with your company?
Because you reduce your carbon footprint, you'd make a superior product, and you'd be doing your part to get to net zero.
Okay, cool. So as far as like the superior product side, how long does like concrete last? You said like it's going to sequester or something forever, but I drive down the road, man, and there's every winter there's new cracks and stuff. So how long does like concrete last made by cement versus concrete that would be made by your product? Do you have any data on that so far?
No, not specifically, but it should be the approximately the same. But it's
Okay.
irrelevant. It's irrelevant in terms of the carbon equation, because even if it's no longer used or it's been torn down, it's still encapsulated inside the concrete.
I see. Yeah, rather than up in the atmosphere and warming things up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you came at this from a full like environmental point of view. That seems what you like the most about it.
Well, I mean, it can be made for the same or lower costs as concrete. So, I learned way back when in the solar power industry, you can't. People don't want to switch to solar because it's more expensive or because it's environmental. It needs to be the same cost or lower, right? For in terms of electricity, the same thing applies to concrete. You know, if It needs to be the same cost, for the end user, because otherwise, it'll be slow to adopt.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that it can't just be the same cost. It would actually have to be a lower cost or a higher adoption rate over the long run because I love people who are into the environment and not want to save the world, but a lot of these guys are just running their company trying to make some money. So it's having that like business piece unrelated to the environment, then that environment boost makes it an obvious choice. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you want to use concrete that's the same price but it is carbon negative? Why wouldn't you? Like everyone would say, well, I would,
Right.
and I will.
Um, indeed. So, does that mean that anyone you work with need to be directly in close proximity to like a steel production plant, or can this work like anywhere? And how many production plants even are there?
Yeah, there's probably 1,400 steel plants all over the world. The Generally you have to be fairly close, like within 150 miles of a steel plant, but that's generally close to uh, a lot of population, so it's not an issue.
Gotcha. So, what does like the long term expansion plan look like? Do you just reach out to people directly, or how exactly are you going about doing this?
Yeah, so we've formed clusters of customers around steel plants. So we're starting off Quebec, then Ontario, then we're speaking to a couple companies in Europe, so England and the Netherlands and other places. So it's effectively we want to go all over the world.
I love it, man.
It's not, yeah, because we're not building new plants. We're retrofitting plants with curing systems and licensing the technology.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just essentially in addition to what someone is already doing at their plant.
yeah, exactly. That's why we decided not to like build carbonate plants because everything already exists. It's just a slight modification to their curing system, and then they can use our technology.
So what does like the startup cost look like to like add to do this add on to their plant?
Yeah, so it's the marginal cost. If they built a brand new plant, it would actually be lower in cost to build a
Sure.
carbon plant. Yeah,
Sure.
because it's a smaller footprint. So the actual marginal cost would be lower. If they did a retrofit, it'd be several $1 million. But the beauty of that is that we've developed a financing program for the curing system, so we can wrap in the cost of the curing system into the actual licensing fee. So concrete is a service.
Yeah. So do they get that like back over time? Are you thinking in like cuz you said that your company is keeping the carbon credits, right?
Yeah.
So do they get that initial return on investment even if they're financing it back over time because they're assuming that people who are purchasing their concrete are going to want to use their product rather than someone else's because it's carbon negative? Is that kind of the idea?
That has been like definitely the uptake so far.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah. So I guess I mean it's such a wide net. I mean, there's probably everyone like this. I just keep thinking of home builders or like cities paving roads, but obviously we said the most used substance on the planet, so there's a market for that, and then we assume that the carbon negative market is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Um, is there anyone else that you're aware of who's doing something like this?
Not specifically. There are people looking at it, but we've got several patents, so it's we're protecting our IP, and we've built like a business around it. So there's probably some scientists somewhere looking at different things, but yeah.
Yeah, and you want to go around the whole world. Interesting. Do patents work around the whole world? Is there they just work in the US?
It depends. It depends if where you file for a patent. So you got to file for a patent in every different country.
That sounds like a lot of work. Right. Um what kind of investors are you finding are kind of most attracted to this venture right now?
Private equity, pension funds, private investors, and some of the world's biggest banks are all we're talking to right now.
That's pretty broad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's got a broad curb appeal, as they say.
Well, I love it, man. I think it's awesome. Um I know 2016 it's 2022 now. Where do you see this thing in 5 years?
Hopefully, everywhere. Yeah. No, I hope we have lots of people employed and getting and converting plants, and doing this sort of as a like all that's left to do is do that. That's where I'd like to see it done. Ethan, it's a total no brainer. Okay, the like we're taking a waste byproduct, we're replacing something that's super nasty. It's less expensive, and we get rid of CO2. It's a no brainer. It's going to happen. Like there's no question in my mind. How it happens and the way it happens, that obviously is going to be played out, but it's a no brainer for me.
Yeah. Well, for me too. I just sometimes people don't like no brainers. They like to sit in their rocking chair like the good old days and keep it going. But the early adopters and the innovators are the ones who are changing the world. So you said you're at 30 team members now. Where were you at like a couple years ago?
There was
Like
four of
pandemic.
us. Four of
Wow.
us. Yeah, yeah, no, but like four of us. Meeting at Starbucks. And then we graduated to like a nicer restaurant. Then we had a small office, and then we had a bit of seed money, and then we got an investor. Built the first part of our pilot plant. Then we were about, let's say, 10 people, and then over the course of the last year, we've added all kinds of people, and over the rest of this year, we'll probably double in size again.
Oh, amazing. And then are they all in across the world or are they all like Canada based?
Most people are in Montreal. We have one person in
Cool.
Paris, and we have one person in New York, but everybody else is in Montreal.
Cool. So you're kind of deep into this like CO2 drawdown way of thinking as I am. Do you have any other ideas about how we can monetize carbon removal? Cuz I've been looking into like a lot of it, and as far as I've come across, your concept seems to be the best possible idea for actually having economies of scale bring down carbon. Because when you do something like direct air capture, it's like it's an amazing technology. It's so cool that someone created it. But then it's like, what do you do with the
What do you
stuff?
do with
Like,
it? What do you do with it? You have to give it to someone like us,
right.
and we'll store it forever, and so those people, all that hasn't been well thought through, right? Obviously, like, there needs to be a market created for value added CO2 based products, and we're an avenue for that.
Yeah. Well, you would appear to be the best and most obvious by far, the most used substance on the earth, and it's physical. It's hard. You can really store it rather than just ejecting it into the ground and having it leave there. And then if it's in a gaseous form, it could just seep back up and then go back into the atmosphere.
Right,
So
eh? Yeah, and it
yeah,
costs a lot of money. It costs a ton of money to do that, right? And it's useless. Like, after you've done that, like, there's no useful part of that, right? So we're
yeah,
making a product that you can go buy at Home Depot.
right. Well, yeah. I mean, I wonder. I mean, it's just the best first place to start because it's the most used substance. What's the second? Do you know what the second most used substance is?
Well, actually, the first most used
Is
substance is water,
water.
then it's
Yeah.
concrete, and then actually, I have no idea what the third is.
He's like, I got to two and I had a great idea. That's
It,
as far as I need to take
it's probably Apple iPhones. I don't know the.
it. Cool, man. Well, Chris, I appreciate the time, man. I've got a good feel for what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. I think it's an extremely obvious solution, and if I had any more than negative $14,000 right now, I would invest in your business, man. Just keep it up. I appreciate the time. Do you have any advice for any other young folks who are like passionate about building a better world, getting involved in projects like what you're working on?
Keep on working on it, because the only time that you actually lose is when you give up.
That's that's awesome. Spoken by a true entrepreneur. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome, Chris. All right, thanks, man. So, if you or anyone else you know is looking to buy or sell a home anywhere in the USA and would like to create thousands of dollars in donations without any cost out of pocket, please visit ccrealty.org today.